This is Crusader. He was born into the First Crusade in 1095 AD when his father, Baldwin I, died. He became the king of Jerusalem at the age of only 13, but his rule was anything but divine. As the medieval world was divided between the Pope and the Caliphate, the Crusaders seized Jerusalem, an important city in both Christianity and Islam. Naturally, this caused some tension. So, to keep the peace, they created an order of holy warriors called the Knights of Jerusalem, whose duty was to protect pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land. Sounds nice, right? Well, not exactly. You see, while most people think of the Crusades as a holy mission, for many of the European Christians, it was just a chance to plunder some undefended cities. And as soon as they heard about Jerusalem's vast wealth, they started heading there. Soon the streets of Jerusalem were filled with European nobles looking to get rich. To make matters worse, the Muslim residents didn't like being subjugated by these Christian conquerors. And so, to make the city more livable for the Europeans, the Crusaders expelled almost all of the Muslims and Jews, seizing their property and giving it to anyone who would help them rebuild the city. The resentment grew. And when Crusader came to power, the hostility had reached a boiling point. In 1118, he ordered the execution of several Muslim emirs on trumped-up charges of plotting against him. Then, in 1119, the Muslim leader, Nur al-Din, took the city of Aleppo, which was close to Crusader's capital. And this lit the fuse. While Crusader was away on campaign, his mother, Queen Teresa, seized several Muslim nobles and executed them without his permission. Crusader was furious. Not because his mother had executed people without consulting him, but because she hadn't consulted him on how best to deflect blame from the Kingdom of Jerusalem. You see, since the Crusaders seized Jerusalem, they had been losing territory to these Muslim leaders bit by bit. And now it seemed that the loss of El Arish was imminent. At this point, a desperate Crusader turned to the man considered the holiest of the Crusaders, the newly appointed Patriarch of Jerusalem, Bernard of Clairvaux. Bernard was a Cistercian monk who had previously tried to stop the First Crusade, believing it to be unnecessary and immoral. But once it started, he threw himself into making it a success. He preached to European Christians about how God had commanded them to seize Jerusalem and gave sermons across France, raising armies for the cause. In fact, it was his idea to create the Knights Templar, an order of monks turned ferocious fighters whose sole purpose was to seize Jerusalem. In short, Bernard was the perfect man for the job. But when Crusader asked him for advice, Bernard told him to lay low. For the moment, Nur al-Din was preparing for war, and Bernard wanted Crusader to bide his time until he was ready. However, Crusader refused, choosing instead to attack. In 1123, he and his knights headed north to take back Edessa. But they weren't prepared for what they found. The city was heavily defended, and their siege failed. Then disaster struck. On his way back to Jerusalem, Crusader and his men were ambushed by Nur al-Din's army. His knights were slaughtered, and he barely escaped with his life. From that day on, Crusader became known as Crusader the Red, not because he dipped his bread in blood, but because he led his knights in a reign of terror. Every town he visited suffered. Entire villages were massacred, crops were burnt, and anyone who aided the sick or wounded was put to death. Even his own knights hated him. In 1134, several knights wrote to Bernard, asking him to remove Crusader from the throne because he wasn't fit to rule. Bernard tried, but the king was too popular with the commoners, thanks to his reputation as a ruthless killer. Bernard then excommunicated him, hoping this would force the people to rise up against him. But it didn't. Instead, Crusader responded by having the Patriarch of Jerusalem arrested and put to death. After that, Bernard tried to raise an army to depose him, but no one would join him. The Pope offered to mediate between them, but by that time, Crusader had seized control of the entire kingdom, and so the Pope's authority over him was limited. In the end, Crusader spent his remaining years ruling over Jerusalem with an iron fist, killing anyone who opposed him until his death in 1162. Hey, everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and subscribe for more historical tales, including more stories about the Crusades. Thanks for watching. Bye.